Hey, we are live. This is Luke T. Barnett on Author Life with Kevin Tumlinson. Nick Thacker will be joining us momentarily. It's due to technical details, mostly user error on my part, that we're starting late. So if you're watching us, if you're joining us, that's why we're late. So, Nick, thanks for... Nick, you're not Nick. You're Kevin.
I can only aspire to be Nick Thacker.
I got Nick on the brain. So thanks for joining me, coming to hang out with me.
Yeah, no problem, man. I'm happy to.
Yeah, so you got a book that just came out last month, didn't you?
Yes, The Stepping Maze.
Yeah.
The seventh book in my Dan Kotler series.
That is awesome.
Yeah, I say this about every book, but I mean it every time. It's my best book so far.
Hey, that's good. You don't want to like release a new book and be like, oh, it's not as good as the other one.
I've done that though. I've released. I'm not going to say which book, but I released a book that secretly I thought not my best work, but it was a. Sometimes you got to do that. Sometimes you get a book as good as you can possibly make it, even though you know that's not necessarily the best, and you let it out there so that it can reach the public. And funny enough, the public rarely notices. I had one person write a sort of negative review. It was still like a 3 or 4 star review, but said something to the effect of, it felt like Tumlinson raced through to get to the end kind of thing.
Never hear that.
So that's yeah. So maybe I'll go back and revise that book one day. I'm kind of in a revising stage at the moment, whether I like it or not.
Yeah. I wanted to go back and re-edit my first book, Half-Orc Redemption, because I've grown so much as a writer since then.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of mistakes. And I asked in a couple of writing groups, and everyone was like unanimous, like, no, just forge ahead. Go back and edit sometime later after you've gotten some.
I think that is good advice. I think for the most part, we really, once the book is out there, we shouldn't mess with it. It's tempting, but the problem with that is you tend to spend a lot of energy going back and fixing things when you could get a lot more benefit out of just pushing forward. And I avoided for a long time. So my first Kotler book, I promised I would tell this story. This is in honor of Groundhog Day. I spent the entire day going back and editing a book that I've already gone back and re-edited at least 3 times.
Wow.
My first thriller, which Nick actually needled me into writing in the first place, but I wrote the Coelho Medallion. That's the first Dan Kotler book. And it had its issues and its errors or whatever. But I had gone back and I had edited and re-upped it. Hey, there's Nick.
You guys hear me at all?
Yeah, man.
Can't see it very well.
See you at all.
I know. Well, I've been able to hear you the whole time. I just haven't been able to actually get this thing to turn on. So
okay.
Sorry, but it's mostly my fault, Nick. And
no, not at all, man. No worries.
Well, Nick, if you didn't live on the sun, then that would probably be more helpful.
Hey, look, we have the polar vortex here as well. Okay, it's been like 75 degrees and it's been raining nonstop. So,
all right. Hey, check your settings, man. You're not actually using your mic, I don't think.
That's what I was just going to ask, is if this thing is actually working. Hold on.
We're gonna hash out our technical issues on air.
Hey, that's
right. On air.
Yeah, ad hoc, whatever we do.
While he's doing that, I'll tell you the rest of the story.
Okay.
I had edited that book, revised it to fix problems that I knew were part of that book from the day I launched it. I knew there was a problem, a major problem, and I went back and fixed it and edited the whole thing. Somewhere along the way, I know what it was. It was like a month or 2 ago. I actually re-uploaded that book after having made a slight tweak to something. Maybe it was the other books, also by page or something. Somehow I overwrote the edited version of that book with an earlier draft. So I started getting, I got all these nasty, reviews, 1-star reviews saying the book needed to be edited. And I went and looked, I was checking on these, and these people had gotten the book. Some had gotten the book for free. Some had verified purchases. I was yelling at Amazon, and come to find out it was my problem. So I literally spent all day today, since about 5 this morning, re-editing that book and getting it back up there.
So, oh man, that must have been exhausting.
Yeah, it was all right. It was all right.
Nick, how are you doing?
Hey man, I think I'm here.
Yeah.
Good, you're here.
Yes.
Hopefully the microphone sounds better than my built-in one. I'm using the fancy one.
Yeah.
I think.
You're not.
Sorry about that. Are you serious?
Yeah, I'm serious.
This microphone right here isn't working. It's not doing anything.
Nope.
Hello. Oh,
No.
that's good.
Yeah.
Hey, glad I bought this thing so I could do fancy podcast interviews and not sound like crap.
You're all right. At least we can hear you, man.
Okay. Well, hold on a sec. I'll be able to. I'll twiddle with it while.
That's fine.
While this all goes on.
It makes for a riveting podcast.
Oh yes.
You'll know because it'll start sounding amazing pretty soon.
You're gonna be like going this deep baritone voice, like, "Hello, I'm Nick Thacker. Hello, ladies."
That's what it's all about.
So speaking of podcasts, you guys were actually the guys that set me on. You and Justin Sloan were the guys that set me on the indie author path.
Oh,
yeah. So my wife was listening to a podcast by Michael Hyatt, and I was thinking, I was trying to decide whether to go indie or trade pub, but
right.
And I was like, I didn't know anything about either one, and I was like, okay, well, why don't I listen to a podcast about creative writing? And so I typed in creative writing, and creative writing career was the second one that came up. Yeah. So I started listening to that, and that pointed me to Self-Publishing Answers, Nick's podcast. And so between the two of them, I like gained like so much knowledge, just like drinking from a fire hose almost. And it's like, okay, wow, I'm definitely going indie because it sounds like a lot better, more control, more payoff. And just listen to you guys go back and forth and the rapport you guys had. I'm not too loud, am I?
No, man, you're good.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, thanks for saying that. I don't know if this mic works. It looks like it's turned on now, but
you sound quieter, more soft spoken.
Like it's further away from you.
Yeah.
I can fix that. That's
pick it up.
one thing I can do. Just pick it up and talk into it.
Hold it like you're.
Hey,
there you go.
There you go.
Hey, that's what it's like. You're giving a speech at a wedding, Nick.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's a little bit better now, but
that's a little better.
No, well, thanks for saying that, man. I think I don't know if it was Michael's podcast or not that was talking about that difference, but one of the things that really stuck out to me was that it's not really a choice a lot of times between choosing to go traditional publishing or choosing to go indie. It's really choosing to try to get an agent, to try to get published, to try to make money traditionally, or to go self-published. And so for me, that was it was really my second book when I was sort of doing this as a business. The first book didn't really count. I self-published that because I just didn't have any other option. But as I started to make that decision from a business standpoint, I decided self-publishing was always going to be generally better for me because I didn't want to wait around for other people, the gatekeepers, if you will, to let me know that, sure, we'll pitch your book, we'll promote it, all that stuff.
We should say that, it's not a bad thing to go the traditional route.
No, certainly not.
Yeah.
If that's how it works best for you, then yeah, go for it.
Right. I think the key is authors have to always think of their careers as a business, and sometimes that business is better served by self-publishing, and sometimes it's better served by traditional publishing. I had a traditional contract briefly, and it was not going to serve me financially. It was going to kind of hurt me financially. And, I walked away from it and paid back my advance and everything. So the self-publishing route for me started 2008. I, kind of stumbled onto everything that was happening with Kindle and CreateSpace and that sort of thing. And I started, publishing, probably publishing too soon. I'm kind of glad I made I have some stuff out there that's not that great, and it probably needs a lot of help these days. But I'm kind of glad I started when I did, because they say the first million words are practice, right?
Yeah, I've heard that.
You get so much better when you're able to dive into this. And I'm reading Jane Friedman's Business of Being a Writer right now, and one of the things she said is that things have changed quite a bit. There used to be a worry that if you went self-published, you could hurt your chances of getting a traditional contract. that's no longer the case. You know,
No.
certainly your mistakes can linger if you have lousy sales, if you're, you know, if you get destroyed by reviews, you know, that can have an impact, but it's no longer something you need to worry about as much. So,
Yeah, I've heard that people start getting offers from traditional publishers after getting so many good reviews and so many sales and stuff like that. I think haven't you had? I know you said that you if the right offer came along that you wouldn't say no to it from a traditional publisher.
right. Of course, the right offer, man. That's going to be asking a lot for
Yeah.
the trad world, and I mean, because frankly, I can just earn more money self-publishing. I mean, it would take something phenomenal to bring me over and to go through all that and to take risks and lose rights to a property and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but
exactly. I mean, dollar for dollar, it's still not equal to me because it's not about, you know, just making more money. I mean, of course it is, and I think I can with most, you know, everything else being equal. It's about the reporting. It's about the data collection. It's about being in full control. It's about so many other variables that traditional publishing just doesn't allow authors to have access to. And so for me, it was always, you know, I'm not a control freak, but I certainly feel like, you know, if I'm producing these books and they're my books, I want to have some control over them. I want to be able to design the cover or have it designed by someone. And be able to sign off on it and say, yeah, that's great, or no, back to the drawing board. But with traditional publishing, most times the author, they produce the book and it, for all intents and purposes, becomes someone else's baby.
Yeah. That was the major thing with me. It's like I remember hearing an interview with I can't remember this guy's name. The client, the firm.
Oh, John Grisham?
John Grisham. I'm sorry, no, John, not that guy. Tom Clancy.
Oh,
and,
okay. Wow.
Yeah, I know.
Old interview.
Yeah. Anyway, they had asked him like what he thought about the movie version of his book they're making, and he said they just took his story and butchered it, and he has no control. It's like I never want that to happen to my stories.
You know, that does bring up. Sorry, go ahead, Kevin. My bad.
No, go ahead.
I know I'm on a pineapple time delay over here. My service.
You still need to move your mic closer, dude.
Are you kidding? This right here.
That sounds good.
You know what?
Good,
Nick Cole did the same thing. He was like sitting there with his mic the whole time and going like this.
That's ridiculous.
So I mean, if you do
believe the stupid mic is not working that well, man.
It's working great, but you don't have it close enough to your face.
Just tie a rope to it and like dangle it in front of your face.
Professional podcaster. Now you're muted.
It sounds great. What?
No, I can hear you.
You briefly muted yourself.
I think you're briefly going deaf.
I'm not. I'm trying to help you out. I see you.
Hey,
I can't stand to see you struggle, my brother.
Just turn your audio up on your end, and then. All right, I'll just talk like, hey. So I'm talking now. I don't know what I was gonna say. Let's just move on.
Sounded good when you did that. Your gain's down. Go ahead. Tell us. Share your wisdom. You being quiet just means we got to lean in closer.
That's right.
Listen closer.
So, you know, I was just talking to my wife about this a couple weeks ago because I went to go see Aquaman, and I didn't really grow up reading comic books as much, but in college I had friends that did and got into it, knew a little bit of the story. Enough to know that some of the things were accurate, some of the things weren't, depending on which version you read, all that. And we got into talking about my own stories and not if but when they're going to be turned into movies and how I feel about that. And I'm hoping it's hard to say now because I've never had a book turned into a movie, but I'm hoping that I can maintain this idea that it's a different medium, it's a completely different story, right?
Yeah.
And by the time it gets to be shown on the big screen, that's so much time has to be condensed into one story. That I'm not going to be upset when they change some of those things. They're going to have to do it. Spielberg did that with Ready Player One, and I thought the movie was great. It was nothing like the book, but the book was great as well. For me, it was a treat because I read the book, loved it, took my wife to see the movie with me, and we both liked it. And it was a different story. It was like watching a whole different story unfold. And so if I went in with the expectation that it was going to be exactly the same, I would have been pretty upset.
The thing that I worry about when it comes to that sort of thing, selling your rights for a different medium, you have such scenarios like Bonfire of the Vanities. got translated into film, and the film tanked so bad. The movie was so bad, and people hated it so much that suddenly this book that had just charted for years on the bestseller lists got no sales. Like nobody wants to touch it. And the author of that book, and I can't remember his name right now, but the author of that book, he's in interviews saying, how much he regrets signing over the rights to make that film, because they made the film, they made it the way they wanted. They didn't ask for his input and didn't want his input, and it wasn't representative of the book, but it tanked the book. So that's the kind of thing you want to be really cautious about if you're going to go out there with this idea of I'm going to make this book available so that maybe they'll make a TV series out of it or a film out of it. You just got to know that once you sign that line, it's no longer your baby.
Yeah,
that happened to Roger Zelazny. I was just reading about this today. Roger Zelazny, a fantastic science fiction writer, wrote a ton of short stories. He wrote Damnation Alley, and in the 70s they made it into this film that as a kid in the 70s, I thought it was an awesome movie. Rewatching it, you cringe because it's terrible. It's awful, but it had little to nothing to do with that short story. This Hugo and Nebula award-winning short story. It had almost nothing to do with it. So, and I've talked to Bryn, last name Bryn. I don't know why I can't remember his name. The guy that wrote The Postman, David Bryn. I interviewed him, and we talked about The Postman, and he won't talk about it. It's like, look, it's not my story. It's not his story. I happen to think that's a great movie, and I happen to think it's a great book, but the two don't overlap much.
Right. No,
and he doesn't like it. So there's this danger that if you do. It depends on what your dream is. If you want to produce a film around your book and you want to have control over it, then you're going to have to do all the steps. It's just like publishing. You're going to have to go do all the steps yourself if you want to maintain control. But just like in trad publishing, once you sign a contract, giving someone else partial ownership of that property, they're going to do whatever they want with it. So as long as you know that.
Yeah, well, that's what Nick Cole and Jason Onspot, the guys who did Galaxy's Edge, they're so like dead set on like not letting their series go down the path that Star Wars went down. Right. They are actually they're talking to film people and stuff like that, and they're intent on like doing it themselves, not like completely, but partnering with people, but not giving up the rights where they don't have control over it because they don't want their story to go that same path.
Right.
So if you got the gumption to do it, go for it. But I don't think I could do it.
Takes influence, and if you don't have it,
I definitely don't have that.
Yeah.
So you guys actually worked on a collaboration together, the Lucid, right?
Yes.
Yes, we are still working on that.
Oh, are you? Oh, okay. Cool.
We're at least one more book out, I think.
I think it's gonna be. We got to try to wrap it up in book 4, and I've owed Kevin an outline for the stupid thing for probably 2 years now.
I think it's 2 years now.
Yeah.
Possibly more. However, I kind of feel like I need to go. You and I have both talked about this, Nick, going back and maybe doing a whole rewrite of that series, mostly so that we have it in our heads again.
Right.
But also, when Nick and I first wrote that, we were still in a whole sniffing each other's butts kind of scenario. Like we didn't know each other. Like we had just met. I bought him online. Yeah,
you did.
I paid $200 for him online.
Buy a workhusband.com.
I was trying to add author coaching to my business at that time, and I went out and found a bunch of author coaches and paid them for a session and hung out, and that's how I met Nick. And I had kind of hinted around at us collaborating on something. And I was talking about nonfiction, but he got really excited about fiction. And I was determined I was going to be a sci-fi writer at that point. And he was a thriller writer. I wish that I had let him influence me more towards the thriller side at that point. Because Nick is the one who convinced me to write thrillers. That completely changed my life. I'll owe Nick for the rest of my life because of that.
That turned him into the Kevin Tumlinson.
Exactly.
He was
Yeah.
just Kevin
I was just
Tumlinson.
I was a Kevin Tumlinson.
He was just one of the many. Yeah.
One of the many.
Yeah. Kevin likes to give me credit for a lot of things that he shouldn't give. I deserve no credit for hardly anything. I still contend that the reason I got to marry my wife was just because she was like drunk or something when I asked her. She said yes, but no, I think that was probably one of the most serendipitous meetings that I'd ever had. I know it is so far in my life because it's one of look, he's crying. It was one of those, yeah, it was one of those kind of match made in heaven type things where there really was no honeymoon phase. It was like, hey, well, I've got pretty thick skin. Hey, I do too. Let's do this. Let's figure it out.
But we didn't believe each other.
We didn't believe each other. So we did kind of dance around it a little bit, but I don't think our relationship has changed a whole lot. I think we're a little bit more up. We're a little faster with the criticisms, but
right.
If they need to be said, they're going to be said, and more often than not, we're on the same page. So it's worked really well. I'm actually surprised we haven't done more co-writing, but I think the answer to why we haven't is just that I don't think either one of us have really found any great examples of long-term viability for that being super successful.
It's a really collaboration, I think, can be very lucrative and very helpful for a couple of authors' careers, But I think the challenge is, like, I think, Nick, you do a lot more collaboration than I do, actually, because you've got your whole mega team now, which I'm a part of somehow, but not somehow contributing yet. I don't know why. I think that's my fault.
Your time will come.
My deal is I've always been solo, so that's part of it. But I've been trying to build up that part of this thriller career now since 2016 because I had a whole bunch of books in the sci-fi and fantasy category. So really, I think one of the reasons I haven't tried to collaborate that much on thrillers is because I feel like I still need my library. And I think that if you are collaborating, a lot of successful collaborations really lead to those two people have a career. What's the Preston and
Child?
Wait, Preston and Child? Yeah.
Douglas Preston, Lincoln Child. Yeah.
Right. Those two, I know that they write books individually, but I never see them. I only ever see their collaborative work. Right. So to me, that's their career. And I don't, not that I wouldn't really love a career with Nick, but I want to make sure I have my own name out there and have my own books out there.
Oh, I'm the same way. Yeah, absolutely. I think there's going to be time. There's always going to be more time to write, to write books, and I think collaborations are an attractive thing for me for just honing my skills and practicing and getting to work with other people. But, I haven't tried to approach the Harvey Bennett universe stuff as a moneymaker. It's never been about you write a book and I publish it and I make all the money. It's always been about, like, let's at least split things down the middle. Let's just have fun doing it. See what happens. See if we can spin off some interesting new series, characters, all that. So for that, on that regard, it's been working really well. But we'll see. Yeah, here's hoping there's a runaway bestseller in there somewhere.
Big ones.
I don't know. Speaking of interesting characters, I was scrolling through your books, Nick, the other day, and I noticed a very Tomb Raider looking cover.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of actually when I said that. That's Jo Bennett. She's my main, I guess you would say, is the Harvey Bennett series. And so I've been writing those books. I'm coming out with book 7 here pretty soon. And when I launched the Harvey Bennett universe, the idea was to take some of these characters that didn't have a major role, but were in there as kind of the sidekick characters and give them fill out their backstory a little bit.
That's cool.
We've been doing that, but Jo Bennett doesn't appear anywhere in the Harvey Bennett series. She was totally made up by David Behrens, another friend of ours. And I think he did a fantastic job with it. She is very much a Tomb Raider type character, maybe a little rough around the edges, less skilled, probably less experience, because she's young. It's kind of but she's got a long story career ahead of her. I can tell.
That's awesome. I want to pick that up just based on the cover, just based on the character.
Yeah, well, that's one of those, another serendipitous discovery where you're browsing the stock websites and you see that model that works really well, and I don't know how many she's got, probably 5 or 6 shots that look really good, and after that we're gonna have to figure something out for the covers. I don't know. Yeah, she's on a ton of covers too, so she's certainly not the only Joe Bennett out there.
You can recycle.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to figure something out. Maybe edit, transform, flip horizontal, something like that.
I'll help with that. I'll help you out with that.
No one will know.
There you go.
Put a Groucho mustache on her and
make her a little fatter later on down the road.
Yeah, give her a little chub.
Fatter.
A little double chin.
See, this is why so many thriller authors have covers that use figures in silhouette.
Right.
They'll use the same three. I love Joanna Penn, and I love her covers. She's got great branding. But if you look, it's the same cover over and over again.
Yeah. Efficiency, smart business.
Yeah.
Mark Dawson does the same thing.
Yeah, Mark Dawson does the same thing.
Yeah, Stewart does his covers. Yeah, he does recycles a lot of the same guys. But Stewart's brilliant for other reasons, doing designing covers and all that. But yeah, I need to get to that point where I'm using the stock photo as just one element within the cover. Right now, I'm just looking and look, this stock photo is ready to go. Pop it on the cover, put my name on it.
Yeah, I use stock as elements. I don't use straight up stuff. Nothing goes on my cover completely untouched.
Oh, you're missing out, man. You're missing out.
Yeah, I am missing out. I'm missing out on freaking out and panicking because I can't find more poses for this chick.
Yeah.
I live on the edge, man. I live life on
living on the edge. Yeah.
So your latest book, Kevin, is The Stepping Maze.
Right.
You said it's the 6th in Dan. I read the first one. I listened to Coelho Medallion. I still have trouble saying it, and I've heard it like 10 billion times.
Dude, every single one of his books is going to start having names that aren't even in English anymore. I'm just, Evan, what is this? The Jobiga Sigil.
I do that on purpose because I think it sounds, mysterious and
because you like pissing me off is why you do it.
That short story, I have a short story available for free when you sign up to my newsletter on my website called the Janai Sigil.
Oh,
I just
make up some words, put a vowel next to a consonant and call it a word.
So I had to look it up to make sure because I get mixed up on how many of these I have because I have like a couple more that are written and or being written and edited. So the Stepping Maze is book 6 in that Kotler series.
So
what's that?
What's that book about?
So it's about it's kind of a look back at sort of the code breaking stuff that happened in the World War II and pre and during and post World War II era.
Mm-hmm.
And this ties in with Kotler's personal history pretty tight. A couple of his former college professors are kidnapped, and whoever did it left behind clues that are tied in with code breaking and that sort of thing. And the history part of this, because Kotler's an archaeologist, he's an anthropologist. He's having to kind of dig back and look at the whole history surrounding this to find the clues he needs to rescue these guys. The whole thing ties into his own personal and family history too. So that's the first time we've looked at that in this series.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and this stuff always comes for me. I do a lot of reading and research, looking for ideas like this, and I had read The Woman Who Smashed Codes, which was I forget now. Her name is completely blown out of my brain, but that had led me to read a whole bunch of other stuff on this topic, and so this is where it led me. And I joke about it, and I say it every time. This is my best book so far, the best book I've written.
Awesome.
I just stopped saying that about mine because I felt really excited about the last Harvey Bennett book, and I started writing it and actually threw it all away, started over again. It took a year to finish. And I was really pumped. Man, I was so excited about it. And it came out and it was just like, everyone was like, oh, okay, cool. That's it.
Oh,
cool, come on. That's
people like it, but it was I built it up in my mind, right?
That was Antarctic forgery for me. I was really excited when I started it, and then I kind of got into the muddy middle, and it was real tough to keep going. I paused for most of 2018, finished it toward the end, and I think I think it's a great book and people really love it. But I wasn't as excited about that book as I was other books. So, but I had to do it. I had to do that book. This is the way I've been thinking of it. Finishing that book, I got inspired to jump back in and get it done when Nick and I were at 20 Books Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
And while I was there at that conference, I finished that book. Like I was halfway through the book and I wrote the second half of the book basically at that conference. And you know, I'd get up every morning at like 4 in the morning and I'd knock it out. And that put me on a path of getting back to writing daily again. I have been writing daily anyway, but I had sort of diverged from writing fiction daily, which is that's a bad plan if you want to have a novelist career. But because of that, it got me on track. I wrote Stepping Maze in the next like 15 days. I've written another book that is nearly done. And all those releases have been very good for me. So it's put me right back on track. And I wrote Janai Sigil in that time as well. And I've got another one. I'm writing a Christmas short story in that universe that I'll release to people around the holidays. So
nice.
I've become very productive.
You're going to make up some words for that one too?
Yeah, I actually have already made up several words.
Hey, I do that all the time in my fantasy books, but that's allowed.
That's fantasy. You're supposed to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
These are not made up words, by the way, Nick. These are
okay. Hey, I'm a writer. Okay, I'm pretty sure I know all the words. Okay,
Nick, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kevin.
No.
He had another joke ready.
I was gonna slam Nick again.
He's got that. He's just got it ready. So just any pause, you just wait, man. There's back.
It's good to be back on a podcast with you, man. Because slamming you privately is not as much fun.
No, because you never know when I'm going to respond to the text. You know,
exactly.
The joke isn't funny after like 3 or 4 days.
You don't have an audience either.
I miss it too. I've been feeling really confident about myself lately. I was like, what's missing in my life? I haven't had Kevin to make fun of me.
Keep you humble.
Gotta keep you humble.
Yeah, that's right, man. Keep me down where I belong.
So, Nick, you want to pimp out the Aryan agenda for us?
I can. Aryan actually is a word that I didn't make up, unlike most of Kevin Tumlinson's books. But it is a book about, man, it's one of these books where the reason I was excited about it was it reminded me of the very first book I ever wrote, which is The Golden Crystal. And the reason The Golden Crystal was exciting was I never expected to write another book. So I thought, well, hell, all the good ideas I've ever had have to go into this one book. So, you know, I wanted to talk about Atlantis. I wanted to talk about, you know, the ancient Egyptians. I wanted to talk about Easter Island. And that all became this crazy story. And I wanted to do the same sort of thing for the Aryan agenda. I didn't, however, have any new ideas. So I went back to Atlantis and ancient Egypt. I didn't put Easter Island in there because I just didn't want to rewrite the same exact book again. But, you know, the first 2 acts were pretty much the same thing. But it was fun because now I had this cast of characters after 5 books with these guys. I could just sort of throw them in there and say, here's a bad guy, here's the good guys, see what happens. And so it was a lot of fun for me as a writer because I did less outlining at first. I just sort of let them run around and do their stuff. And then when I read that back, I hated it. It was terrible. And they weren't doing anything. They were just killing people, that I had to throw it away and start over. But I used a lot of those ideas that I had generated from that process. And that became what the book was. It's essentially a book where they're trying to figure out where Atlantis is. You know, it's real, it sank somewhere, and what's the real story behind it? Obviously, it got blown into some giant, you know, myth and of epic proportions, and they're trying to cut away that myth and try to figure out what the reality was. And so, you know, as I always try to do, there's a lot of research that went into it. There's a lot of fact that went into it. It's still fiction at the end of the day. It's still a lot of fun, but oh, and Nazis. You had to throw Nazis in.
You gotta have Nazis.
Oh, I figured Nazis when they're called the Aryan agenda. I'm like, okay, that's gotta have Nazis in it.
Right, exactly. It's gotta have Nazis. You know, I'm a pretty creative guy, so I was like, what have we not done before in fiction? Let me. They'll be the bad guys.
It's funny. Go ahead, man. But I want to. I'm gonna add something.
I'm gonna let you finish, but
I'm gonna let you finish.
No, I'm done. I was just coming out. I was trying to see if there's any jokes in my back pocket for you.
No. So Nick, and Ernest Dempsey, and a couple other folks, but really the three of us, we share a very our audiences overlap quite a bit.
We're writing the same stories.
We're writing the same stories. And so I got an email from someone who said she said that she's on both Nick's mailing list and Ernie's mailing list. And she was saying, you know, I think she meant it kind of as a compliment, but she was talking about how, you know, I love being on all three of your lists because, you know, I've always got something to read, and I can see the same story from like three different perspectives.
Awesome.
Because I wrote Antarctic Forgery has Nazis. I wrote the Atlantis Riddle, which is about, you know, finding Atlantis. Nick and Ernie both have their books on those topics.
I got the Ice Chasm is set in Antarctica with actually. Right. I was really, really, you know, mind blowing. I used the Chinese as the enemy instead of Nazis because it was modern. I didn't want to.
That's a good one.
I wanted to save them.
I haven't used the Chinese yet.
Yeah, use the Chinese, man. The Russians and the Chinese, they're ripe for the picking right now, man.
I got a Russian. I have a Russian in Stepping Maze.
Yep. Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Did you write his dialogue phonetically?
So
I want to go down to the Antarctica.
When I'm the trick that I use to indicate foreign accents without actually saying he had a foreign accent or he has a Russian accent or whatever, is they become very proper in their speech. Everything they say, they don't use contractions.
I do that. Yeah, they don't use contractions at all. I use
that's my cue that this person speaks with an accent is when they speak more properly than I do.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
I usually just put he said in a way that sounded like he would say it if he was a Russian.
He said, sounding as if he had a bag of marbles in his mouth.
I came up with this one character who's like this. She's in like a North suburban America, but she's like from the South. It's like from Arkansas. And she's got this Southern twang, and I started writing it phonetically, and then I just pulled some people on some of my Facebook groups that I'm in, and just kind of posted the side by side of what I actually had written and then what I thought was like less phonetically written. And they're like, "Oh, definitely go with the second one because the first one just like it's hard to read, and it's just like I had all these no G's, everything was."
I think it's okay to do that in small doses. I have a character named Sarge who talks in a sort of slang, very not Southern per se, but he's a rough and tumble ex special forces guy, you know. And I don't have him do it the whole time. I'll have him kind of pepper some of what he's saying with like if you ask him something and he says yes sir, I'll ram that together, you know, because that's the way he would say it, or he'll drop his G's or something like that. But I don't do it all the time.
Right.
If you do it all the time, it becomes distracting, which is the last thing you want when you're writing anything, particularly dialogue. You don't want the reader to have to stop and consider what they're reading. You want them to, you know, all of it disappears. But having that stuff in there in little doses, you can set the stage for, you know, this person is, maybe they're vulgar, maybe they're not as educated, maybe, you know, whatever. You can set that up, and then you can kind of phase it out a little. Just throw it in every few paragraphs instead of every line, and you're good.
Yeah, I think that the readers will probably carry that through. I wound up just reducing that girl's dialogue to the phonetic side of it to just taking away the G's in the end, so she would always say like hiding or finding.
Yeah. So because in reality, if you were to meet that person, you would be able to determine what they're saying. They wouldn't be completely unintelligible. Some folks are, but you don't have to do an accurate depiction of someone's dialect. You can, you know, like you said, you drop the G's or whatever. As long as the core of that word is there and readable, you're good.
Yeah. So, Nick, you have something that's like not anything to do with books. Well, it does have to do with books, but it's not writing. It's composing. Sonata.com. Is that what it is?
Sonata and Scribe.
Sonata Scribe. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Sonata and Scribe. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it's related to books in that I'm doing soundtracks for books, and
Yeah.
what I'm finding is I'm having to explain it's not really for audiobooks necessarily, although an author could use them for their audiobook, but it's really just a soundtrack. It's as if your book was a movie and I was the film score composer for that movie. So I'm going through and coming up with themes for your characters, your settings, getting the overall tone of things, and then composing, for a full album, 10 to 12 tracks that represent that story.
So 10 to 12 tracks, is that for like a 50,000 word novel, or is it?
No, I mean, that's really so because I offer, pricing structure. So I'm going to give you 10 to 12 tracks no matter how long it is. You give me a short story, I'll come up with 10 to 12 tracks for it. But
Oh, okay.
typically, the ones that have been doing that, I've got Michael Cooper's has done twice now, an album, and the first one is for his really the first book of his Outsystem series, and then the second one is actually for the Orion War kind of thread that is a longer series as well. So it's more books to read, and I'm doing a whole album for that series.
That's cool.
And then Michael Anderle is doing one as well.
Oh, nice.
So that one's gonna come out. That one's tricky, man. He's so fun to work with because it's great for me. Some of the creativity is it frees me up a little bit because he's already thought about exactly what he wants. The challenge, of course, is he already knows what he wants, and so I capture that. So when he first described it to me, it was like, what's that band, Five Finger Death Punch, Metallica, S&M, the album they did with the symphony.
That one, yeah.
Yeah, so he's talking, heavy metal, hard rock at least, with a full orchestra in the back. And so you can imagine, like I'm sitting here, like I'm composing every instrument, literally, writing, everything. And there's a lot of instruments in the symphony, and then you put a rock band in front of that and trying to get it, balancing it for mastering and soundstage and all that, just trying to get it to sound like it's in the right spot is, it's damn near impossible at first. But when I finished the overture and kind of got his orchestra set the way it was going to be for the album, it's sped up quite a bit. I'm on the third one now for him, and hopefully going to be speeding up third or fourth one now. But he loved it. I mean, they came out really, really well. He actually posted the latest track on his Facebook page for his fans, so that's one place people can go to hear that. I think it came out pretty nice.
That's awesome.
He's done one for my books too. A couple of two or three tracks.
I was kind of testing this whole thing on Kevin, and so I owe Kevin, an album with it, but I'm using his as kind of a learning, or I was using as kind of a learning tool. And so what I wrote for Kevin, I'm now trying to go back and actually redo according to actually making the orchestra sound better and more realistic and all that. So his themes and stuff are done, but I haven't gone through and actually finished all of his tracks. But that whole series, reminds me. I read every one of them when they come out, and I'm always reminded of my series, the Harvey Bennett series, is similar, but kind of the Indiana Jones National Treasure sort of feel to it.
Yeah,
definitely more modern, but that's kind of that was the dream to compose something like that anyway. So this is a perfect one for that. So. It's taking long because I don't want to screw it up.
Well, that's good. That's good. That's a good way to go about it. I was actually thinking about your sonata the other day because I was going through. I have a bunch of songs saved on YouTube, and I'm writing right now. I'm currently writing this fantasy short story series with a princess who's befriends a gargoyle, and
as they do.
Oh yes, that's so typical. But they're always going out at night, and so I found these I had a couple songs on my playlist that were like these just like kind of dark melodic type of songs. It's like these things fit really well, so I actually made a playlist just for that series and just put a few songs on there. And I thought, this is exactly what Nick does.
It's exactly right. And I even pitch it that way to authors when say, hey, look, most likely you're writing to music, and if you're like me, you've designed a playlist that reminds you of your characters and your themes. And the problem is, of course, that they're not written for your characters and themes, and they're all over the place as far as
right.
They don't necessarily all gel together and all that. And so my goal is to come in and say, no, I've read your series and I know your characters, as well as any reader would, and I know your themes and your settings. And like I'm doing one right now. I don't want to mention the author's name because he's got this whole Kickstarter campaign coming out for it actually on Tuesday. And it's part of the Kickstarter is to raise money to do the full album. So he paid me to do the first track, which is the overture. It's typically all the themes together, and it was the most challenging piece I've had to write because he's writing a steampunk historic fiction, kind of fantasy thing that's travels the world and time, and it's just everywhere and all over the place. And he described it sort of as like the Sherlock Holmes that Hans Zimmer wrote the music for. But then his tracks that he gave me, what I call temp tracks, the stuff that he sent over as examples, what he was listening to, it's like, you know, Daft Punk, Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross, the guys that did, of course, Nine Inch Nails, but I think they're Nine Inch Nails, right? Is that the band? But then they also did The Social Network, and they just, it's all synths and keyboards and things like that. And I was like, wow, okay, so how do I incorporate, you know, this classical orchestral sound with these really modern synths and everything like that without it sounding super cheesy and like 80s with a, you know.
Yeah.
I think I pulled it off. I think it sounds really. I'm really.
I like it. I
sent it to Kevin and Ernie. They said, well, Kevin said he liked it. I think Ernie's. It must have pissed him off because I haven't heard anything.
Whatever, Ernie.
I'm sure he liked it, but the author said that he loved it. He was like, "This is great, man." When I first heard the Discovery comp, I sit down at a piano and actually just come up with some themes. It's nothing but piano. Then I say, okay, so I'm obviously going to orchestrate this, but what do you think? He said, yeah, you know, I liked it. It was good. It was hard to tell where you're going to go with it. And so when I said this back to him, the final version, he was like, wow, I never would have thought in a million years it was going to sound like this, but it's perfect. And that's exactly the kind of compliment I want. I don't want to be like, oh yeah, it sounds exactly like the Batman, you know, Returns soundtrack that Hans Zimmer came up with. That's cool. It sounds great, but no one wants to sound exactly like someone else. So I think it was, it was great to hear that it was different. But still,
that's awesome.
You know, still quality.
Man, that's got to be exciting.
So it's certainly fun. It's great. The problem now I'm having is I've got probably too much music work, and I'm finding myself trying to really plan out when I'm going to actually start writing again. Because, like Kevin said, hard to be a novelist if you don't write any books.
Yeah. So Kevin, you're doing. You're not writing music, but you're doing the wordslinger podcast. That's got to take up your time too, right?
It takes up. I've gotten it kind of streamlined. Yeah, the episode that went out yesterday took up all day, just because I had a kind of a equipment failure scenario happening. But yeah, it takes up some time, but I've gotten it pretty well streamlined. Like now, it's down to I get the interviews, they're in the can. I've got the show kind of mapped out so that I can. So all right, here's the irony of this show. I decided I'd better get this into some sort of system to make it easier to hand off to someone else to produce. But when I did that, I made it so easy for me to produce, I don't want to hand it off to anybody. So I actually can sit down and do an episode now in under an hour, like from beginning to end, unless a whole bunch of stuff goes wrong, which happened yesterday. But yeah, it's time consuming, but it's been really good for me all around. Because of that show, I've made a lot of contacts in the industry. I ended up connecting with the Draft to Digital folks, which has led to me working with them. You know, it's been nothing but benefit for me. Even during those times where I kind of started thinking of tapering it off and shutting it down, and it ended up benefiting me, so I kept it around.
That's awesome. So, okay, so you guys are both very busy guys. And Nick, you have a family. You got 2 young
Nick's
girls,
kicking around in Hawaii, going to beaches, sitting on
hard life, man. It's busy. Yeah, there's a lot of beaches to
Zuck's
go to.
wall.
Zuck's wall. That whole thing.
I did do that. I did go to his wall. I posted on his wall.
You posted on his wall.
Yep.
I thought it was funny. I thought it was
I'm sitting there looking at him like, I don't get what he's saying.
It would have helped had I known that was Mark Zuckerberg's wall when I saw the post. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's what I didn't know. Yeah, that's why I didn't get it. I'm like, what is he talking about?
Now, have you been to Robin Masters' place yet?
No, I have not. Not yet.
So, if I may ask you guys, what does your writing schedule look like with all these other projects you got going on, and Nick with your family? How do you where do you place your writing and then your rewriting and your editing? Not.
Well, so I've recently started with an assistant, and that basically makes up for some of the time that I lose with the music stuff. Kate helps out managing everything that I would say it's more than just like an admin assistant. Not to diminish admin assistants, but she's a more specialized assistant. She does this full time for other authors, so she gets a lot of the ins and outs of what it means to be an author and what's needed. So I can say, hey, I need this cover uploaded because I have a book club this weekend, and she'll say, okay, great. So she doesn't. I don't have to explain how to do that. She already knows. She can log into my Amazon account, upload it, get ready for everything, make sure everything's good with the book club, and I can go write, or go to the beach. So that's been really helpful as well. Of course, she doesn't actually write any words for me, and so I still have to come up with the time to write. So I've been getting up. For me, it's early. For Kevin, it's like I think he's already getting ready for bed by 5 a.m. But I've been getting up at 5 a.m. Our girls get up at 7, and so I typically have 2 hours to get some stuff done before chaos ensues. These last couple weeks, I've been using that time for going through a book that I owe to one of my co-writers. She wrote a rough draft of the next Joe Bennett novel. It's great. I'm going through it now with a fine-tooth comb, and then I'm going to be expanding it, writing some scenes, chapters, all that stuff myself, so I can earn my share, And then, so once that's done, then I'll go back to really jumping in, trying to finish this next Mason Dixon novel, and then the next Harvey Bennett one as well. That schedule's working for me. Oh, well, so that's 5 to 7, and then I typically during the week will work, about 8 to 8:30 to noon, and then again from about 1 to 5:30 in the afternoon. Because again, I do this full time, and so
right. That's right. Yeah.
My job is just do the writing.
Yeah.
But now it's I live in a church. I'm in a church office right now. I'm helping out my friend with his church. He's a senior pastor here in Hawaii, and that's how we're able to come out here. And so I do some worship stuff for the church, which means I'm leading worship on Sundays. We have rehearsals Wednesday evenings, and then there's meetings during the week. Still within 15 hours a week, I would say. But that eats into the time, of course. And then with the Sonata and Scribe stuff, there's just a ton of, it was just like adding another job to your schedule. It's not just the work. It's not just the writing. There's all this other stuff that comes with it.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to find time for mastering and getting metadata typed in or whatever it is, this uploaded to DistroKid or however I'm going to release the tracks, that kind of thing. So that's mine. I would say my schedule is non-existent. I love and hate not really having a hard schedule. I work really well when I have a schedule, but I also love not having to feel like I'm tied down.
Yeah.
So lately what we've been doing is, like our family days. Today's a family day. Friday and Saturday, we typically will go to a nice beach and hang out, get some lunch, go to another beach, just hang. And I'll bring a Kindle with me, and I can work on editing on a Kindle. I can take notes and all that and do it that way on the beach. So I do the work when I can. I don't like that answer because I'd love to be able to say, this is my office hours and everything. But what I know the alternative is not getting to see my kids as much, and that's just not an option for me. So
yeah.
So I'm happy with it. I always feel like I need to be doing more work, and I feel guilty for that. But that's on me.
That's the curse of guys like us. Actually,
that's not the truth. That's just the way I feel about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm the exact same way. Like I know that that's not true, but I still give myself a ration of crap about everything. But yeah, I mean, it's similar. I get up at 5 every morning. It was 4.
Take a nap at 5. You get up at 3.
So I get up at 5, and I do my morning routine stuff. Take the dog out, that sort of thing. I'm generally sitting down to write it by 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock, I write until around 9, and at 9 I start doing stuff for Draft to Digital, which is usually not a ton. I mean, it's a manageable workload, really. It's mostly me reaching out and talking to other authors, doing podcasts, writing copy for things, that sort of thing. That's all very flexible. So if I'm in the groove at 9 o'clock and I don't want to stop, I can keep writing indefinitely. Writing is part of my morning routine now. It's like brushing my teeth. If I don't do it, I've been telling people this too. You should skip your daily writing the way you would skip brushing your teeth, reluctantly and with great disgust. But I do that. I have a process that I used to preach against this solidly, and now I have a loophole people can use for editing as you write, which is, I write and then I loop back the next day and edit the scenes that I wrote the previous day, and then I continue and write my next like 2,000 to 5,000 words, whatever I'm going to do that day. But basically, I'm a morning person, so getting up at 5 and getting everything done and getting to the keyboard, that's healthy for me. And I'm lousy in the afternoons. But what I've started doing, like I take an afternoon nap, like around 1 or 2 o'clock, because for like 20, 30 minutes, and then I get up, and if I've got more stuff I need to do for D2D, I'll do it. But then sometimes I'll work on a short story for an hour or so. That's become a new part of the routine. And, I typically will do that, and I'll get back and do a little more for Draft to Digital if it's needed. I don't have set schedules for anything, which is very convenient for me. Draft to Digital is a great resource for me all around, because it's a little bit of additional money, but it's also, they take care of benefits. They pay for travel to conferences. Through them, I meet people in the industry and I learn more about the industry and I grow. And there are a lot of benefits to that. If I typically will schedule, I have set days and times that I have set aside for podcast interviews for the show. So if, I've got something set up, I'll do it. If I don't, I use that time for something else. And then on Fridays, I get up, do the writing and everything, but around 9 o'clock, I start producing that week's episode, and I generally post that within a couple of hours. And, it's all very flexible, and I can do everything but the podcast. I could do the podcast anywhere, but I'd prefer to do it here in my office. But I can do everything from anywhere. So that makes things a lot more comfortable for me. The work, I'm basically at a full-time level with the books now. The D2D stuff, because it's remote and because of the nature of it, it's kind of D2D is kind of a side hustle in a way. It's a really nice kind of bonus to my life. And I really enjoy the people, and I really enjoy working there. So that's been very beneficial to me. But it's a strange schedule. Sometimes it feels like I've got a lot of extra time, but then I have a tendency to cram things into that and add a whole bunch of stuff.
I think we all do.
Yeah. And like Nick, like I will literally be in the dead center of doing something productive that has to be done, whether it's for me, the show, or for D2D, and will guilt myself for not doing something else that may not even be as productive, so there's a whole like anxiety thing you have to juggle there, but for the most part, that's it. I've been refining my writing and editing process over the past year, really, so that I've got a nice easy setup. I mean, a nice easy process that produces really clean manuscripts by the end. And when I don't overwrite my clean manuscript with an old manuscript, it works great. That was my Groundhog Day experience, was revisiting this book that I've published a number of times since 2016.
That's nice. I need a process like that. So what's up next for you guys moving forward? What have you got on the horizon?
Go ahead, Kevin. I'll try.
I have another full-length Dan Kotler book in progress.
No title yet?
I have a title. I'm just not revealing it yet.
Oh,
I've revealed it and the cover to Nick and Ernie, but I haven't.
You won't be able to understand what the title is anyway.
The title is it's written in Cyrillic.
It's insane. Cyrillic, yeah.
That's good.
But it's not actual words in those languages either. I hope you know. He just picked the letters that looked cool.
I just picked around. I picked letters that form the shape of a puppy. I'm nearly done with that. I'm writing that Christmas short story. I'm kind of getting myself back into a short story groove. One of my strategies, one of the things I wanted to add to my plate, because I didn't have enough to do, was to start writing short fiction as something I would pitch to magazine markets. as well as giving things to my list and what have you. But I'm going to start pitching those to the traditional magazine markets as a kind of discoverability tool and a bit of extra income. Back when I first tried doing short stories, I was trying to make a living at it, and it didn't, that didn't pan out because there's too much of a gap and there's too much to juggle, and so it got really stressful, and I walked away from it. Now, because I don't have to make the money, I actually think I have a lot more, as Seinfeld would say, I have more hand. I have a greater control over it. So that's part of the strategy. 2019 is really kind of about refining what I'm doing and making it better. And that stuff's working really well. So I'm going to continue that. And as for the rest of the stuff, it's pretty much going to continue as it always has.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm kind of much the same as Kevin. This year is about honing, focusing, really getting my systems the way that I think they could be, the way I want them. Last year was growth. Last year was, let me prove to myself and the world that I can do this thing full time and really make it work. Obviously, I want to continue being full time, but now it's really just kind of figure out, hey, am I going to wake up at 5 and when am I going to get this stuff done? And just building a better schedule for myself so that I can be more productive, but also not feel guilty about when I'm not. So that's kind of what I'm focusing on in general. Specifically, I'm also I'm not sure how to really describe it yet, but I've been kind of dabbling with this idea of like an asset lifestyle where I'm just producing stuff, having stuff come into the world. It was obviously evident that I was doing that when I kind of went from just books to books and these soundtracks that I was making. Now, of course, I make the money up front from the author when they buy a package, but without getting into all the rights and stuff like that, they own the rights. They can do whatever they want with it. But then as the performer, I still would get paid on the back end from the streaming sites and then, ASCAP, BMI, all those places, the performing rights organization. So anyway, so they're long story short, they're an income stream for me as well. And the author doesn't have to pay them. It's one of those things that it's magic money that's floating out there that if you claim it, the Spotify's and iTunes of the world will give you the money.
Yeah.
Nice.
But I started to think about that and see my pennies start rolling in every month for those streaming tracks. And I was like, this is kind of interesting. I hate the idea of having all my eggs in one basket, and I'm exclusive to Amazon for all my ebooks. And I say I'm self-published and I'm self-employed, but really, I feel like I've just been getting a paycheck. I work for Amazon. I've just been getting a paycheck from them.
Yeah.
And so what I want to try to do for the next couple of years is see how many other income streams I can come up with. I've been talking to my business consultant, Joe Solari, a great guy, brilliant, about this. And he's really big on being, but also direct sales and how to sell a book direct to your reader. So not just the ebook, but your hardcover, paperback, audio, you can sell those through your website, even if you're exclusive to Amazon for the ebooks. So I'm going to really look into that and see if I can make some of that stuff happen. Then how can I also get to the point where I've got tiers of products, right? So, I've got Joe Schmo comes and buys an ebook, but then maybe a hardcore fan wants an audio signed hardcover, or maybe another one wants, a package with a paperback and an audiobook. And maybe there's the one person out there who would pay $3,000 to come fly out and outline my next book with me. That doesn't take very many of those kind of fans before you start to realize there's another income stream over here. There's a whole other, not only just for the money reason, but just because there's a whole other thing that we could be offering to our fans that is really cool. And so I really started to explode, and I was imagining and dreaming late last year, thinking about 2019 goals. I had a lot of tooth pain at the end of the year, so I was on like all kinds of drugs. So this dreaming stuff, it was like, wow, these, and of course now going back through my notes, and I was like, that's actually not a very good idea at all. But after I culled through all that stuff, I realized I was kind of onto this idea of this asset lifestyle, I think, where I'm not just this writer who writes books and that's it. And if I one day lose my hands and can't write and can't speak into a computer to dictate, I could still be a professional at something. And so the music was a part of that. And then I'm sort of starting to feel like drawn to the designing board games world, strangely enough. And it's kind of dropping a bomb on everyone there. But I've got my very first board game in production right now, self-published, self-printed, print on demand, being shipped over. It should get here in the next couple of weeks. And I'm excited to open that up and see how horribly I've screwed up that game. But that's another example of I used to feel like I couldn't allow myself to do that stuff because I'm not a board game designer. I'm a writer and I need to write. And so this year I'm trying to explore some of that. You know, what does it look like to just be a guy who does what he wants to do and figures out a way to make money from it? It'd be great, man, if I could come up with a Harvey Bennett board game and a Harvey Bennett soundtrack and all the stuff that, you know, it's all one. That's obviously a great idea as well. But I'm talking, what about just this random party game over here? And then I wrote soundtracks for these books over here, and I've got my own series, and I just all these different things I'm picking up income streams from, and altogether it gives me a pretty rich life. Not financially speaking, but just being able to do whatever.
Right.
That's kind of my goal. I don't know how far I'll get with that, and that wasn't a very eloquent way of saying it. Kevin will now tell you what I meant in perfectly eloquent and thought through terms.
I'll tell you, but I'm going to write it in Cyrillic.
And he's going to speak it,
and I'm going to use it as the title of my next book.
No, that's cool, man. That's really neat. That's like a really good strategy, it sounds like, because you'll have those multiple income streams, and if like Amazon tanks and all of a sudden books become outlawed across the world, then you'll still have your music and your other stuff.
Exactly. I mean, if something major like that happens, we've got, you know, bigger problems, I think, than all that.
Yeah.
But you're exactly right. It's the right way of thinking, right? Like, what happens if Amazon goes away? Well, there's going to be another one. Like, I'll just go put my books on the next thing. But obviously, there's going to be some terror that will ensue when I realize my entire income stream gets washed up overnight. And so how can I expand that?
Yeah.
Not, at the same time, not go back into doing the crap that I hate, like just web design,
right?
Full-time web design.
It's like that idea that if there's an earthquake that breaks California off into the ocean, you can always move to somewhere in the interior U.S., but you still got to deal with.
Can we make that happen?
We can make that happen? But you can move.
No,
but you still got to deal with the ocean. You know, you still got to get out of the ocean. So it's the same thing. You don't want to be in a scenario like Nick's doing something I think is really smart, which is, you know, he's building himself a helicopter so that when California goes, he just hops in his helicopter and goes and lands somewhere else. So
right.
I'm going to steal the idea of what he's doing. Actually, it's funny because I like what you're calling it, that asset lifestyle. I've been on this whole content thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because that's my hammer. You know, I had every solution, everything is a nail for me in the writing world, content world.
Right.
But I think that you're actually onto something. I love the board game thing that you're doing. I won't announce what you're doing, but I've seen it and it's cool.
I'm excited about it, man. That's the thing. If for no other reason, it was fun to do. I enjoyed.
I'm letting you figure it all out because I got some board game ideas that I've always wanted to kick.
Exactly, and that's the thing. So, now I'm thinking about, well, crap, I can only come up with so many ideas per day. What if I found someone else out there who's like, hey, man, I've been through this whole process. Let's partner up on it and do something fun.
That's key, by the way. Is you gain specialized knowledge by doing something. And then you can actually profit from that knowledge by opening it up for other contributors.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. So that's actually reminds me of stuff that I wanted to do because like I used to play Magic the Gathering.
Oh, absolutely. Me too.
Yeah, and I stopped playing it just because I had some certain convictions about it. But I
stopped playing it because I got married and wanted money.
Yeah. That's the other thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I thought, you know what, it was a really good card game, and I really enjoyed playing. It's like, you know what, maybe I'll make a card game that's like it, but you know, without certain things I didn't like about it.
Right.
And so I started making some cards for it, but I haven't done anything with it. There's a site, gamecrafter.com, I think it's called.
That's where I printed mine. Yep. That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
So, but then my son yesterday or this week, he's like, "Hey, Daddy, I made a board game." I'm like, "You made a board game?" He's like, "Yeah." And my wife's like, "Yeah, it's actually really inventive."
It's actually pretty cool.
Really? Wow. So I played it with him the other day, and it's like, actually, this is really, really pretty unique. This is neat. And I've got the card game stuff, and I've always wanted to make stuff with wood. I thought what would be cool is if I could make the weapons from people's books out of wood and then paint them, you know, and then sell them.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always wanted to make that guy's axe and just have it hanging on my wall.
Yeah.
Like an actual metal and wood axe, I wouldn't be able to lift it. But if I could make it out of wood and make it look real,
you can 3D print it.
3D printing.
That's true. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. That wasn't around when I started this book.
I was eyeballing that picture. I've seen your books and stuff and flipped through them, and like I I just am always reminded, like, not only with the soundtracks, like how well that series would sound as a soundtrack, but also what fantasy, sci-fi, anything steampunk series wouldn't be awesomer with a giant cool board game to go with it, with all those.
Oh yes, absolutely. I imagine this as a video game fighting game.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna design a Dan Kotler thriller board game, archaeological thriller.
I'm one step ahead of you. I want to do one with me, you, and Ernie. I want to like
oh man,
you pick one and with archaeologists is like the best one. Yeah.
Then we can everybody can have their pieces and come in from their various series, dude.
That is awesome.
So, but I think Chris Fox is doing that. I think Chris Fox is doing it for his is it the Maid series?
Yeah, he is. Yeah, I forgot about that.
The card, it's like I don't even know yet, but I'm sort of like jealous because he's ahead of me with the idea, but at the same time I love Chris. He's such a good guy, and I'm so pumped for it because it's such a perfect idea for that crowd, especially where there's so much crossover between the board gaming guys and the readers of that genre. I think it'll be a little trickier for us, Kevin, because it's going to be harder to find that obvious crowd of crossover fans, but they're out there. People like me and you that would enjoy.
Well, I mean, all you gotta do is find people who love Indiana Jones, Tomb Raider, and present this board game. They'd be all over it.
Yeah, exactly. But at the end of the day, too, it doesn't really cost anything but time these days. I don't have to go get a production run of 10,000 copies of this thing. I can literally print on demand it, and I don't know if that's a verb. I just verbed that. I've just verbed that. I verbed that word. How's that, Kevin?
Quelo medallion.
So you can go print on
you
demand.
Can pod it.
You can pod it. And have people just literally go to the gamecrafter.com and buy it, and it gets shipped. I don't even know about it until I just get my paycheck. And so it's so brilliant to be able to just have this whole universe of things where I've created these intellectual properties, and I could sell them as assets, and I can wrap them together and call them bundles, and this one's related to this one, and get the whole set for $1,000. And man, it doesn't take very many of those types of fans to buy that kind of stuff, and you're in business. And so that's kind of, I'm looking at it. Obviously, this is born out of a labor of love. I love this stuff. I wouldn't do it if I didn't. But there's so many new ways to be able to monetize this that I'm really excited about. So we'll see where it goes. That's kind of what 2019 is looking like for me. That all kinds of different stuff. How can I get them all to kind of synergize?
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, let me know how it goes, because I think I'd like to follow that same path in the future.
Oh, you'll know when you see my games in Target.
I don't go to Target anymore.
Can't go any farther and pull the computer off the desk. So
well, I've kept you guys past an hour. I really appreciate you coming on. I've had a great time talking to you guys. Why don't you tell people where you can be found online?
Nick?
I'm my name, nickthacker.com is kind of my home base. I've been, my wife's been getting me into Instagram a lot lately, which I hear the kids are doing. So if that's your jam, you can find me. I'm the Nick Thacker on Instagram. And then, of course, Facebook is author Nick Thacker. I don't like Twitter, but I have it. I'll never see it.
I don't like it either.
I'll never see it. So
I am on the Facebook and the tweeters. I think. No, I can't do Instagram for some reason. I've tried.
I can't do it either.
I don't care about it.
No.
I made whatever. I said, look, I'll have Instagram. I'll keep my account, but well, there's two things. I said, but I'm not going to post anything on there. You just have to take cool pictures of me and post them, because I'm not going to post crap that I'm like sitting here going, what do they call it? Duck face. She's like, you shouldn't put that on Instagram. I'm like, well, then do it for me. I don't know what to do. And then the second reason is I wear all wool clothes a lot, and there's these clothing companies that sell all wool clothes, and I'm secretly trying to just get a really cool Instagram page that they'll send me free stuff, and I could just not have to buy clothes anymore. That's my second plan with Instagram.
Is it my turn? Can I tell you?
I think so. Yeah.
I'll interrupt you again. Don't worry.
You can find me on nickthacker.com. KevinTumlinson.com. That's where you find everything, Kevin Tumlinson. So all the stuff that I do. And I'm on Facebook and Twitter, etc. If you type my name into any given search engine, you'll probably find
like Bing.
You can use even Bing has a hard time not finding
Bing.
Me. Yeah. DuckDuckGo. Is that it?
DuckDuckGo. My wife uses DuckDuckGo.
Yeah.
For what it's worth, Kevin, you are on my website. I think you can find Kevin.
I am on your website.
When I was first building this new, it was like 2.5 years ago. I put up a new theme, and I just put a joke in the contact page. Like, if you have a problem with the website, contact Kevin Tumlinson. And I forgot that was there. And so some reader didn't know who Kevin Tumlinson was. Sent me an email and was like, "Hey, I'm trying to do this thing on your website. I didn't know what your series was." I tried to find Kevin Tumlinson. I didn't know who that was.
How do you not find me?
Yes, I was like, I said, just Google Kevin Tumlinson.
So when they approach me and they say I'm having a problem with Nick's site, I say no problem. Go to kevintumlinson.com/books
and buy everything, and all your problems will be solved.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Every time. No, thanks for having us on, man.
Thanks, man.
I love this stuff.
Yeah, me too. I'm enjoying it. It's episode 3, and I just enjoyed because I don't have writers here in Cleveland very much that actually write genre fiction, which is weird. Yeah. But it's just nice to be able to connect with other writers online face to face like this. It's like it fills that gap, that little hole in my life.
How do you think I feel, man? I'm out here floating on an island, so there's no writers at all.
Yeah, that's rough.
That's right. It's a hard life.
That is rough.
Yeah. All right, guys, thanks for coming on. Anyone who wants to leave a comment in the chat, or not in the chat, in the comments, feel free. You can subscribe, all that fun stuff. I'm not going to go through all that stuff. But until next time, guys, keep writing and keep reading.